Vermonters fortunate enough to live in turkey country thrill at the sight of the majestic wild turkey. Flocks such as this one are now common occurrences in many parts of the state. And thousands of Vermont residents, as well as visiting sportsmen from out of state, annually take part in Vermont's popular hunting seasons. The wild turkey is the largest of the North American game birds. There are 4 races or subspecies of the wild turkey in the United States. Osceolas are found only in Florida, Rio Grandes in Texas and surrounding states. Merriams live in the mountain states of the West. And the eastern wild turkeys that inhabit the eastern part of the country. This is the subspecies that resides in Vermont. The scientific name for the bird is Meleagris galopavo sylvestris, which literally means guinea fowl of the forest. Turkey populations depend upon good habitat. When European settlers came to what is now Vermont, they found it to be almost entirely forested. Early survey records described Vermont's forest as mature, with a larger amount of beech and chestnut trees than is present today. At that time, turkeys were known to occur only in the lower elevations of the southern counties of Bennington, Rutland, Windham, and Windsor. Then, as now, turkeys sought out stands of red and white oak for their acorn crop and favored areas of modest snow accumulations. Significant settlement in Vermont did not occur until around 1760. The pace of occupation quickened after the Revolution, and by 1800, some degree of settlement could be found statewide. Land clearing occurred at a startling pace. By 1880, only 150 years after white settlers arrived in Vermont, 75% of the state had been deforested due to farming and heavy logging. As a result, the turkey population plummeted, and along with mountain lions and wolves, turkeys became extinct throughout the state. Beginning in the high mountain country, one farm after another was abandoned as farmers were lured west by the rich, fertile soils of the Plains states. Slowly, the Vermont farm fields left unattended began to grow back into forests. Many of these nut-producing hardwoods, such as oak and beech, are now over 100 years old. During the 1950s, the stage was being set for the return of the wild turkey, and attempts to establish a turkey population began by releasing pen-raised turkeys into the wild. Hundreds of game farm turkeys were released throughout the state by well-meaning individuals and sportsmen's clubs. Suitable habitat once again existed in southern portions of the state, and first attempts to re-establish a turkey population were undertaken. Most of these birds, however, were several generations removed from the wild. They lacked the wariness and stamina of truly wild birds and were poorly suited for survival in Vermont's rugged climate. Despite numerous attempts, all efforts to establish a viable turkey population from pen-reared stock failed. By the mid-1960s, it had become apparent to wildlife biologists that in order to successfully establish a wild turkey population, a different approach must be used. New techniques were developed to safely capture turkeys, which could then be transported to colonize unoccupied habitat. In 1969, Vermont wildlife biologists secured permission from the New York Conservation Department to trap 15 to 20 wild turkeys for release in the southwestern section of the state. Turkeys were leg-banded to aid in future identification, and biologists recorded the animal's weight, sex, and age. Transported to the release area, they were once again free and readily adapted to their new home. The capture technique still used today involves gradually enticing the birds to a pre-baited area. In the Northeast, turkeys are more easily attracted to bait during the winter months when natural food supplies are low. Once the birds become accustomed to visiting the bait, biologists set up a large camouflaged rocket net to be shot over the birds during the capture.
These are going to attach to, okay, in those rockets. And you got holes in the back, where it's just like a rocket. We're going to load that with some gunpowder. We're going to take our mighty gunpowder. We're going to slide that right in here, like so. And we're going to run the wire right up through one of these holes. Well,
the birds are closely monitored at the capture site from a nearby blind. Turkeys are renowned for their extraordinary eyesight and keen wariness. Even in the camouflage blind, small movements by the biologist may be detected by the alert birds. Slowly, the flock feeds towards the baited area. Because of the bird's ability to move quickly, the net cannot be fired until all the turkeys are busy feeding. Many escape the carefully executed net firing. The biologists move in carefully to minimize startling the captured birds any further. Turkeys are quite calm when captured and seldom injured as a result of the netting. One by one, they are removed from the net, and the biologists record the information needed for study.
Beard. We got 16 pounds, 7 1/4 Ks. Okay. Alrighty, put the band on it.
Most important natural forces which affect overall reproduction and survival of the wild turkey. Vermont's winters can make survival difficult. The eastern wild turkey is a surprisingly hardy animal and can tolerate periods of very cold weather, even temperatures of 20 to 25 degrees below zero. It is the winter's deep snows which present a more lethal challenge to the birds. Even a foot of snow presents a serious survival threat. Travel becomes difficult. With limited mobility, the turkeys are easier prey for predators. In addition, the birds become unable to scratch through the accumulated snow, and starvation becomes an increasingly dangerous possibility. Nearly everyone is thrilled by the sight and sound of wild animals. Our quality of life would be markedly poorer without it. As is the case with all wildlife species, land use by humans is the principal factor determining the future of Vermont's turkeys. Forests now cover 80% of Vermont. About 90% of Vermont's forests are privately owned. The vast majority is owned by over 75,000 individuals who singly own small holdings and collectively control the state's wildlife habitat. How landowners use and manage their land has a great influence on wild turkeys and other wildlife. On this private woodlot, a professional forester and a landowner work together to improve the acorn crop of this oak stand by planning logging operations.
What we did in this location is we're managing for both the forest products and wildlife, and we've made some openings here to enhance the growth of the trees that remain, and also to increase the amount of mass production from the trees by opening up the crowns. The increased light, as I said, will increase the amount of mass that you get on individual trees. The crowns will spread out, and that's extremely beneficial for turkeys. That's probably the most important winter food that you can have. The other important thing, or one other important aspect of managing your woodlot, is you do want to maintain a certain amount of variability in terms of species. You want to try to have as much diversity as possible, because there's certain species that will produce mast at some years, and other years it's different species that produce a lot of seed. And turkeys are very adaptable, so they'll utilize whatever types of seed or mast is available. You'll notice here that we've got a lot of small oak seedlings that are starting to break through. That's important in terms of forest management. That's what we're looking for. That's going to be the future of the forest. And you've got cherry that's coming in, which is an important wildlife species. Turkeys especially, they'll use the black cherry as they mature and they produce a lot of fruit in the fall. Plus the heads of the ryegrass that we've planted here are going to provide seed for the poults in the early springtime. That's important. And the insects that are going to be in the grass are important poult foods. So all in all, you've got a much greater diversity of species than you had in the area before we did the cutting. You've added another whole layer of diversity here.
Viable wildlife populations in the future. The Department of Fish and Wildlife is proud of its role in restoring the wild turkey to Vermont. The bird provides valuable recreational and economic benefits to the people of the state. Perhaps the most important benefit is the satisfaction of knowing that wild turkeys have once again returned to the Green Mountain State.